Welcome to another video. This is Dr. J. This is just a little follow-up on what we have been talking about in the previous video. Now, one thing you have to understand is that human beings are designed for communication. Even as a newborn, if you look at the baby's face and the baby is a few days old, the look in the eyes of the baby, the movement of the face, the movement of the eyes is all indicative that the baby is in the process of communication and the baby needs to be and wants to be communicated with. Hold a 3 or a 4 or a 5-month-old baby in your arms and look at the way the facial features are when you start speaking to the baby. So basically we've been designed and the brain has been made for communication. Now, exposure to human language, exposure to human words, exposure to those sounds builds a circuitry in the brain that allows the brain to absorb more words. So if you expose the baby to X amount of words, then the brain responds in a way to absorb more than those amount of words and is ready and capable of absorbing more. So the more you give to the brain, the more the brain is capable of absorbing and accepting. And that's like a snowball effect, really. So it's in other words, as simple as that. It's like going to a gym. Once you start going to the gym and you go onto the treadmill and you're not used to walking that much, maybe the first few days you'll walk 1 mile and then with time you start walking 1.5 miles and 2 and then you just keep building up your stamina to whatever level you want. So similarly with the brain, the more you exercise the brain, the more you expose the brain to words and human sound, the more it expands. Now, the size of the vocabulary of a baby is directly correlated to the amount of language that the baby is exposed to. Now, research from MacArthur's Communicative Development Inventories, CDIs as it is called, shows that at 12 months, a baby understands about 55 words and speaks about 1 to 2. Now this gets better. At 16 months, the baby understands about 170 words and speaks about 25. At about 18 months, the baby can understand 200 and speak about 50 words. And then from then on, there's an explosion. And at about 24 months, an average baby can understand 1,000 words and speak about 200. Now this whole scenario, this whole ball game changes if you expose the baby to more words and more language. So for example, a baby who is nourished in a very intelligent environment, in a very talkative environment, in a very healthy environment can probably understand more than a few thousand words at the age of 2 years and speak more than maybe 400. So it all depends on what the baby is exposed to. So my question to you is, don't you think that this is the period when the baby should be exposed to a lot of words and a lot of language? Because we all know from what I've spoken in the earlier video that the period of maximum learning in an entire lifetime is such pre-birth up to the first 2 years of life. And as we all know, that words form the basis of vocabulary, and vocabulary forms the basis of the thought process, the belief patterns, the actions and results. So don't let anyone tell you that you are overburdening your child with excessive amount of language or exposure to words or to alphabets or do not. That is totally false. On the contrary, not exposing the baby to adequate language and adequate amount of words can lead to serious challenges in life. Dr. Warren Dennis conducted a survey in the 1960s in an orphanage where the babies were well fed otherwise and taken care of. They were given meals on times and so on. But there was very little communication between the staff and the babies. And when the babies were about 2 years old, there were some disastrous results when they did the studies and they saw the level of the mental competence of the babies, their intellect, their emotional behavior, their language, that was all really much below par. There's another classical example of a girl called Jeannie, who was kept in captivity by her psychotic father from birth till about 12 years of age. And finally, somehow, she was freed and she was taken out of that scenario. But there was serious damage done to the child. The child could barely walk. The child could hardly see further than a distance of about 12 feet. There was no vocabulary. There was no concept of language. The girl did not understand anything or was able to speak anything. And despite major rehabilitation work, it was just impossible to turn her around. So in the end, again, I'm just going to tell you that all this thing about, oh, the baby is not ready for it, and the baby will only be ready for all these kinds of things when the baby is 5-year-old, you have missed the bus. That window is just going to go away. So please make use of all this knowledge that we have today, and be very careful and very intelligent about your parenting. Thank you very much once again, and I'll see you in the next video soon.